It was close to midnight when I started the drive back home. The air outside was cold, the kind that bites through your jacket even when the heater's on. I had stayed too long at a friend's house out in the countryside, and now I was regretting it. The road ahead of me stretched endlessly into the dark, with no streetlights, no houses, no signs of life, just the thin ribbon of asphalt cutting through open fields and patches of forest. My headlights pushed forward into the black, revealing only what was absolutely necessary for the next few seconds of my life. The silence inside the car was thick. The hum of the engine and the occasional thump of the tires over cracks in the road were the only sounds keeping me company. My phone had no signal. I checked it a few times out of habit, each time staring at the blank bars in the corner of the screen. The GPS had stopped working about 20 minutes ago, right when I turned off the main highway and onto these smaller roads. I thought I remembered the way, but everything looked different at night. The road twisted and turned through empty farmland. Sometimes, I'd pass a cluster of trees, and my headlights would catch their trunks, making them look like thin, pale figures lined up along the roadside. I'd drive through stretches where fog drifted low across the asphalt, soft and white, swallowing the beams of my lights. Every now and then, a shape in the distance would make my heart jump. A signpost, a fence, a mailbox, but as I got closer, it would turn out to be something harmless. My nerves were starting to get to me. About 40 minutes in, I realized I hadn't seen another car since I left the main road. Not one pair of headlights, not one taillight in the distance. Just me, completely alone out here. I told myself that it was normal, it was late, and this wasn't a busy area, but still, the emptiness started to feel heavy. The road signs were fewer now. I slowed down whenever I saw one, trying to make out the reflective letters in my headlights, but most of them were old or worn out. I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere, but I didn't want to admit it to myself. I kept thinking that if I just kept driving straight, I'd recognize something. Maybe I'd hit a small town, or at least a gas station. My gas tank was a little under half full, enough for a while, but not enough to be careless. The trees thickened as I went deeper. The road narrowed, the pavement rougher, and every bump made the suspension creak. I noticed that there were no longer any power lines running beside the road. No wires, no poles, just me and the forest pressing in on both sides. I started to feel like I was shrinking inside the car, surrounded by that endless darkness. Then I saw something. Up ahead, maybe 100 feet, something was on the side of the road. I slowed down, squinting through the windshield. It looked like a car, pulled over onto the dirt shoulder. The hazard lights were blinking weakly, one side dimmer than the other. My stomach tightened. I wasn't sure if I should stop. A part of me wanted to help, but another part, the louder part, told me to keep going. Still, curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled up behind it. It was an old silver sedan, dusty and a little dented. The driver's door was open, hanging slightly ajar. I waited a few seconds, looking around, expecting someone to step out of the trees or wave me down. Nothing. No movement anywhere. The hazard lights kept blinking, rhythmically, throwing orange flashes across the empty road. I turned off my engine and listened. The night was completely silent. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Just the ticking of my cooling engine. I got out, leaving my door open so the car's interior light could spill a bit onto the road. The air was colder out here. My breath came out in faint white clouds. I called out once, just a short, awkward "hey," but the sound fell flat, swallowed by the trees. I walked closer to the sedan. There was no one inside. The driver's seat was empty, the keys still hanging from the ignition. The engine wasn't running. The front left tire was flat. Something about it felt wrong. The car looked like it had been here for a while. There was a thin layer of dirt over the windows, and some leaves had gathered against the tires. But the hazard lights were still blinking. They shouldn't have been able to stay on that long if the battery had been draining. I turned to look around. The trees were close, thick, and shadowed. There was a narrow path, barely visible, leading away from the road into the woods. The dirt was disturbed, as if someone had walked that way. My gut twisted hard, and I felt a wave of unease that almost made me dizzy. I backed away toward my car, keeping my eyes on that path the whole time. I got back in and locked the doors immediately. My fingers trembled as I started the engine. The headlights flared to life, illuminating the empty sedan again. For a split second, I thought I saw something move between the trees, just a flicker of motion, maybe a trick of the light, but that was enough. I slammed the car into drive and took off, the tires spinning slightly on the gravel before gripping the pavement. The road ahead seemed even darker now. I drove faster than I should have, the engine whining as I pushed it through the turns. Every shadow looked alive. Every patch of fog looked like it was hiding something. My hands were tight on the wheel, and my eyes darted constantly between the mirrors and the road ahead. After maybe 15 minutes, the trees started to thin, and I saw a faint light in the distance. A street light, flickering weakly. Relief flooded through me. Civilization. Finally. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't a town, just a small intersection with a single light post and an old wooden sign pointing in two directions. The left arrow said, Haven Ridge, 12 miles. The right one was too faded to read. I didn't know Haven Ridge, but at least it sounded like somewhere. I turned left. The road widened a bit, and I started to feel slightly calmer. Then I noticed something in the mirror that made my heart freeze. Far behind me, at the edge of the darkness, two faint points of light. Headlights. They were distant but steady. Someone was back there. I kept driving, telling myself it was just another late-night traveler. But after a few minutes, I looked again. The lights were closer. I pressed the gas a little more. The lights did too. They matched my speed. My heart pounded against my ribs. I didn't know what to do. Stopping felt worse than anything, but I couldn't keep driving blindly either. The next few miles were a blur of adrenaline. I tried to stay calm, focusing on the road, but those headlights stayed behind me, never gaining too much, never falling back. Just there, watching, following. Then, suddenly, they were gone. I checked the mirror again and again, but the road was empty. No lights, no car, nothing. Just blackness. I didn't stop until I reached the first gas station I'd seen in nearly 2 hours. It sat on the edge of a small town, Haven Ridge, just like the sign said. I pulled up next to the pump, turned off the engine, and just sat there for a minute, breathing hard. My hands were shaking. I stepped out, stretched my legs, and looked back down the road. Nothing. The night was still, quiet, almost peaceful. The fluorescent lights of the station hummed softly. I filled the tank, paid inside, grabbed a bottle of water, and went back to the car. Before I got in, I glanced at the side mirror one last time. There was a smear of dirt on the rear bumper that hadn't been there before. Long, uneven streaks, like someone's hand had dragged across it. 5 faint lines in the dust. That was enough for me. I got in, locked the doors again, and drove straight home without stopping once. When I pulled into my driveway 2 hours later, I sat in the car for a long time, watching the quiet suburban street through the windshield, trying to convince myself that I was safe now, that whatever happened back there was over. But even now, sometimes, when I drive at night through empty roads, I can't stop glancing at the mirror. Not for ghosts, not for monsters, just for headlights that shouldn't be there. It was just after 11:30 p.m. when I left work. I had stayed late finishing up reports, the office lights dimming one by one as people went home. By the time I walked to the parking lot, it was empty except for my car and the soft hum of the nearby highway. I didn't think much of it. I'd done this drive home plenty of times. I knew the route like muscle memory, the 2-lane county road that cut through a stretch of woods and farmland, then curved back toward town. Normally, it took me about 45 minutes. That night, it took almost 3 hours. The air was cold when I started the engine, the kind of cold that seeps through the windshield and makes your fingers stiff even with the heater on. My headlights sliced through the dark, but the light didn't reach very far. It just showed the narrow road ahead, black asphalt, silver lines, and the edges of tall trees that leaned close, like they were pressing in to watch. There was no moon, no streetlights, just me and that thin tunnel of light stretching forward. For the first 15 minutes, it was normal. Empty road, radio low, the faint buzz of the tires on the pavement. Then I noticed something strange. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, the darkness behind me looked too thick, like the high beams were hitting fog that wasn't there. I turned off the radio so I could focus, thinking maybe I was imagining it, but the road behind me seemed to swallow light faster than it should. I tried to shake it off. Maybe my headlights were misaligned, or the cold was making me overthink things. I told myself to just focus on the drive. I had to be up early the next morning anyway, so getting home quick was all that mattered. I checked my fuel gauge, just under half a tank. Enough. The trees along this stretch were old and tall, blocking out the sky completely. Occasionally, I'd pass an old wooden fence or a dirt driveway that led into pitch-black nothing. Most of the farms out here were abandoned or barely used. Every now and then, I'd catch a glimpse of a mailbox at the side of the road, leaning at an angle, faded numbers barely visible in the glare of my headlights. Then I saw something on the shoulder up ahead, something small and pale. I slowed down, squinting through the windshield. It was a traffic cone, half knocked over. Beside it, a piece of torn fabric hung from a broken post, flapping faintly in the cold wind. The cone had a stripe of dirt across it, like a tire had hit it recently. I slowed to a crawl, expecting maybe construction, but there were no warning signs, no flashing lights, nothing else. Just that single cone and the torn fabric. When I passed it, I checked the mirror again. That's when I saw headlights. Far behind me, faint but steady. 2 small dots of light cresting a distant hill. Finally, another car. It was comforting at first, knowing I wasn't completely alone out there. But that comfort didn't last. After a few minutes, I realized those lights weren't getting any closer, but they weren't falling back either. They stayed the exact same distance behind me no matter how much I sped up or slowed down. It wasn't right. I pushed the gas a bit harder, bringing my speed up to 70. Still, the lights stayed the same. Always there. Always 2 dots. I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe the driver was just heading the same direction, matching my pace by accident. But the longer it went on, the less that made sense. 10 minutes later, I took a sharp left turn. A turn most people would miss unless they knew the road well. And when I looked back, those headlights were still there. Whoever it was had followed me exactly. My chest tightened. I drove faster. The engine hummed louder, the white lines flashing under the headlights like a stuttering heartbeat. My hands were slick on the steering wheel, my pulse climbing higher every minute. I started to think about all the stories you hear. Road rage incidents, carjackings, people following drivers into secluded areas. I didn't want to believe that's what was happening, but the feeling in my gut said otherwise. Another 5 minutes passed before I saw a side road coming up. It was narrow and gravel, leading into a cluster of trees. I didn't even think, I just took it. I hit the turn fast enough that loose stones rattled against my car's underside. The headlights behind me kept going straight for a moment, then suddenly disappeared. My stomach flipped. I killed my headlights, letting the car roll quietly down the dirt path until I came to a stop behind a patch of bushes. The world went pitch black. I sat there, engine off, trying not to breathe too loudly. The silence was suffocating. My heart thudded against my ribs so hard it hurt. I watched the main road through the gap in the trees, waiting to see those lights pass by. 1 minute, nothing. 2 minutes, still nothing. I started to think maybe they had kept driving. Maybe they hadn't even been following me. But just as I was about to start the car again, 2 lights appeared, slowly, silently, moving down the road I just left. They stopped right at the entrance to the dirt path I was on. My fingers gripped the steering wheel until they ached. The car sat there for a moment, idling. Then the headlights turned off. Complete darkness. I couldn't see anything now, but I knew it was there. Whoever was driving knew where I'd turned. I waited, my throat dry, every instinct screaming at me to stay still. After a few more seconds, I heard the faint crunch of gravel. Slow, deliberate, moving closer. They were coming down the path. That broke me. I started the engine, threw the car into reverse, and backed out fast, branches scraping the side panels. I turned the wheel sharply, swung the car around, and hit the gas hard. My tires spat up dirt as I shot back onto the main road. The other car's headlights flared back on instantly in my mirror. They had been waiting, The chase lasted for what felt like forever. My speed climbed past 80, then 90. The road was narrow and uneven, my tires skimming the edge of the asphalt at every bend. The other car stayed close, no more than a few hundred feet behind, its headlights burning in my mirror. It wasn't honking or flashing, just following, steady and silent, like it knew exactly how fast to go to keep me terrified but not let me escape. I hit a long straight stretch of road and saw a glow ahead, orange light, distant but real. I realized it was the highway intersection. Civilization. I floored it, praying my old car could hold together for a few more miles. The lights behind me stayed on me the entire time. When I finally hit the highway, I didn't look back. I turned onto the main lanes, merging between a couple of trucks, the wide floodlights of civilization spilling across the road. The other car followed for a moment, then veered off onto the shoulder and disappeared into the dark again. I didn't stop until I reached a well-lit gas station about 15 minutes later. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely open the car door. I sat on the curb outside the station, the fluorescent lights buzzing above me, trying to slow my breathing. Every sound made me jump, the hum of the ice cooler, the whoosh of cars passing on the highway, the click of the gas pumps. After a while, I went inside and bought a bottle of water. When I came back out, I noticed something that made my stomach twist again. On the back of my car, just above the license plate, there were 4 fresh scratches in the dust, long, thin, uneven. I hadn't seen them before. I stood there staring at them, feeling that same cold dread crawl through me again. I didn't know if the person in that car had tried to get close when I stopped on the dirt path, or if they'd brushed against it earlier without me noticing. I didn't want to know. When I finally got home, I parked right under the streetlight outside my building. I sat in the car with the engine off, listening to the faint ticking of the cooling metal. The neighborhood was quiet, every house dark, the wind just brushing through the trees. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, tired eyes, pale face, the faint glow of the streetlight catching the edge of my jaw. I thought about how easily it could have gone another way. If I hadn't turned when I did, if I'd stopped for too long, if I'd run out of gas. Whoever was out there had followed me through miles of empty road, matching my every turn like they'd done it before. Now, whenever I drive home at night, I can't help glancing at the mirror every few seconds. I don't look for faces or shapes. I just look for headlights. 2 small dots in the distance, waiting to see if I'll notice them again. It was close to midnight when I started the drive. I had spent the whole day out of town for work, about 2 hours away, and stayed later than I planned. My phone's GPS said the fastest route home was a back road through the hills, mostly 2-lane country roads that cut through long stretches of forest and farmland. I had driven that way once before, during the day, and remembered it being quiet but scenic. At night, though, it was different. Everything familiar looked darker, smaller, and hollow. The air outside was cold, the kind that made the windows fog up at the corners no matter how much I adjusted the vents. The road was almost completely empty. No streetlights, no cars behind or ahead, not even the distant glow of a house or a billboard. Just my headlights carving through the blackness, showing 20 or 30 feet ahead, and the thin white lines disappearing under my tires. I didn't have music on. I don't know why. Maybe I thought the silence would keep me focused, but instead it made everything heavier. The hum of the tires and the steady tick of the blinker when I slowed for turns were the only sounds inside the car. After about 30 minutes, I realized I hadn't seen another vehicle since I left the main highway. That felt strange. The night air had the kind of stillness that presses on your chest. No bugs, no wind, just complete quiet. Every time I passed through a patch of trees, it felt like driving through a tunnel, the branches closing in from both sides, almost brushing against the car. Then it would open up suddenly into flat farmland, nothing but empty fields stretching out on both sides, the faint silhouette of fences flickering in and out of view. Around midnight, I came across something odd. A truck parked on the shoulder. It was an older model pickup, maybe late 90s, with its hazard lights blinking. The driver's door was open, but no one was around. The red flash from the lights hit the trees, then the road, then back again, over and over. I slowed down out of instinct but didn't stop. There were no signs of an accident, no flat tire, no movement at all. The truck just sat there, empty. The hazard lights kept blinking as I passed, their rhythm still visible in my rearview mirror for a while, pulsing behind me like a heartbeat. A few minutes later, I noticed headlights appear in the mirror. I hadn't seen any cars for miles, and now suddenly there was one. At first, it was a relief. The company of another driver made the road feel less empty, but the relief didn't last. The headlights stayed far behind at first, just two small dots on the long straight road, but after a couple of miles, I realized they were getting closer. I kept driving normally, maybe a few miles over the speed limit, nothing fast. The headlights crept up behind me, closing the distance until they were about 2 car lengths away. Then they just stayed there, not passing, not falling back, just following. I told myself it was just someone heading home the same way. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the curve of the road ahead, but every time I checked the mirror, those lights were still there, the glow catching the edges of my back window. I sped up a little. They did too. The road started winding through forest again. Sharp turns, steep hills, long stretches without any shoulder to pull off. The other car matched me perfectly through every bend. No weaving, no hesitation. Whoever it was, they were watching me closely. The uneasy feeling in my chest grew heavier. My hands started to sweat against the steering wheel. I could feel my heart beating in my throat. I decided to test it. I slowed down to 45, then 40. The headlights behind me slowed too. I sped up to 65. They matched that too. I wasn't imagining it. Whoever was behind me was copying every move. For the next 10 minutes, it was the same pattern. Every straight stretch, every turn, they stayed right behind me. I tried to remember the route. I knew there was a gas station somewhere up ahead before the next town. If I could make it there, I'd stop where there were cameras and lights, but the miles felt longer than they should have. At one point, I came around a tight bend and hit a patch of gravel near the edge of the asphalt. The car skidded slightly before I caught it and steadied back onto the lane. My pulse was racing. I glanced in the mirror again, expecting to see the headlights fall back, but they were still there, steady as ever. A small sign appeared up ahead, Hollow Creek, 7 miles. That was the next town. I gripped the wheel tighter, counting down the distance in my head. I just needed to make it there. Then the lights behind me disappeared. 1 second they were there, the next, gone, swallowed by the dark. I slowed down, scanning the mirrors. Nothing, just black road stretching out behind me. I looked around for a side road, a turnoff, anything they could have taken, but there wasn't one, just forest on both sides. I drove slower, waiting for the headlights to reappear, but they never did. The silence felt wrong now. My breathing sounded too loud in the car. I kept expecting to see something in the road ahead, like maybe the other car had pulled around and was waiting, but the road stayed empty. I drove for another 5 minutes, then 10, trying to calm down, telling myself maybe it was nothing. Maybe the driver had just turned off or pulled over. Then I saw another truck. It was up ahead, parked on the right shoulder, angled slightly toward the trees. Its hazard lights blinked slowly in the dark. For a moment, I thought it was the same one from before, but this one was facing the opposite direction. As I got closer, I saw that the driver's door was open again, swinging slightly in the wind. My stomach dropped. The same red flashing lights, the same empty seat, the same quiet. I kept driving, not slowing down this time. I passed it quickly, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. A few miles later, I finally saw the glow of Hollow Creek ahead. A cluster of streetlights in the distance, the faint outline of buildings. Relief hit me like a wave. I didn't even care about the speed limit. I just wanted to be somewhere with people, light, noise, anything that wasn't this endless road. I pulled into the first gas station I saw, one of those small 24-hour ones with a single pump island and flickering neon sign. The parking lot was empty except for a few delivery trucks parked off to the side. I shut off the engine and just sat there for a minute, trying to steady my breathing. The station lights were harsh, buzzing quietly. When I finally got out, the air felt even colder. I went around to the back of my car, mostly to clear my head, and that's when I saw it, a handprint. A perfect, dusty handprint on the lower corner of the trunk, smeared slightly, like someone had pressed against it and dragged their fingers just enough to leave a mark. It wasn't there when I left work. I would have noticed. The edges were fresh, the kind of clean mark that shows up when the rest of the car is coated with a thin layer of road dust from a long drive. I stood there staring at it for a long time, the fluorescent light buzzing above me, my stomach tightening the longer I looked. It wasn't just the handprint that scared me. It was where it was. Low, off-center, like someone had been crouching behind the car when they touched it. I didn't stay long after that. I filled up the tank, kept the receipt, and got back on the road. The rest of the drive was quiet. I didn't see another car, didn't pass another truck, didn't look in the mirror more than I had to. When I got home, I parked under the brightest streetlight near my driveway and went inside. I didn't sleep for a long time. I kept replaying every mile, every flash of red hazard lights, every shadow that might have been a shape. The next morning, when the sun came up, I went outside and looked at the back of my car again. The handprint was gone, not washed away, just gone, like it had never been there. But there were faint streaks on the bumper where someone had brushed away the dust with their fingers. I don't drive that route anymore. I take the highway now, even if it adds 30 minutes. It's worth it for the lights, for the other cars, for the sense that if something happens, I won't be the only one around. Because whatever was on that road that night, whoever was behind me, they knew the dark better than I did, and I'm not giving them another chance to prove it. It was just past midnight when I started the drive home. The sky was moonless, the kind of black where the horizon disappears and the world feels smaller. I had spent the evening at a friend's house in a rural area outside town, helping him move furniture. I stayed longer than I meant to, and by the time I got in my car, everyone else had already gone to bed. I didn't think much of it. It was only an hour's drive back to my place, mostly open road through farmland and forest. I'd driven that route plenty of times during the day. At night, though, it felt completely different. Empty, still, and unnervingly quiet. The first 20 minutes were uneventful. The road cut straight through flat fields on both sides, wide and empty, the occasional wooden fence barely visible in my headlights. I kept the radio low, just enough to fill the silence. The air was cold and dry, and even with the heater on, I could see faint fog on the edges of the windshield. There were no streetlights, not a single one, just reflective road markers flashing by every few seconds. Every few miles, I passed a lonely farmhouse sitting in the distance, their porch lights like tiny specks far off in the dark. It was peaceful at first. Then the gas light came on. I hadn't realized how low the tank was when I left. I checked the dashboard, 30 miles to empty. There were no gas stations anywhere close out here. I knew there was one in the next town, but that was almost 40 miles away. I figured if I drove steady, I could make it. So I kept going, watching the numbers on the dashboard slowly tick down, the anxiety in my chest getting tighter with every mile. Eventually, the road narrowed, leading into a dense patch of forest. The trees grew close on both sides, tall and packed tight, their branches stretching over the road and blotting out what little starlight there was. The sound changed here. Instead of the wind, all I heard was the steady hum of the engine and the low, dull vibration of tires against rough pavement. I could smell damp earth through the vents, like the air itself had turned to soil. About halfway through the forest, I noticed something strange. Up ahead, a faint red glow flickered through the trees. I slowed down a little, trying to make sense of it. When I got closer, I saw it was a car pulled off onto the shoulder. An old sedan, hazard lights blinking. I eased off the gas, instinctively scanning for movement. The driver's door was open. The car was tilted slightly, one tire flat. I thought about stopping, but something in my gut said no. The scene didn't feel right. There was no one around. No flashlight beam. No movement near the trees. No sound except my own tires rolling slowly by. The car looked abandoned, but the engine light was still on faintly, as if it had only recently died. I kept driving. As I passed, I checked the mirror. The hazard lights flashed rhythmically behind me. casting an eerie glow across the empty road, until they faded out of sight. I tried to shake the unease, but my shoulders stayed tense. I told myself people break down all the time, that maybe someone had gone to get help. Still, the image of that open driver's door stuck in my head like a thorn. About 10 minutes later, I glanced at the mirror again and saw headlights. At first, they were far away, faint specks of light cresting over a small hill. I didn't think much of it, probably just another late-night driver. But the lights grew brighter quickly. I checked my speed: 60, then 65. The car behind me was gaining fast. I didn't want to slow down, so I stayed steady, keeping an eye on the mirror. Within another minute, the headlights were right behind me, maybe 2 car lengths away. I waited for the driver to pass, but they didn't. They stayed there. 2 blinding white circles locked onto my rearview mirror. The road was too narrow to pull over safely, and the forest pressed right up to the shoulder on both sides. I kept my hands tight on the wheel, trying not to look in the mirror too often. After a few miles of this, I started to get irritated, but also uneasy. Every curve, every hill, the car matched my movement perfectly. I sped up a little. The headlights stayed the same distance behind. I slowed down, they slowed too. It wasn't a coincidence. The longer it went on, the more the nerves in my body screamed. I could feel the weight of those headlights pressing into me through the mirror. My car felt smaller, the darkness outside thicker. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, the headlights vanished. I blinked, leaning forward slightly. The road stretched out behind me in the mirror, empty. No glow, no flicker, nothing. I looked back again. Still nothing. For a few minutes, I kept driving, trying to make sense of it. There were no turns, no side roads they could have taken. Just a single stretch of highway through dense woods. My heart was still racing. I told myself maybe they'd turned their lights off or slowed down way behind me, but it didn't make sense. A few miles later, I came to a clearing, a small, open area with a dirt turnoff that led to what looked like an old maintenance road. I barely noticed it at first, but as I passed, I caught something in my peripheral vision. A dark shape, low and still, parked near the edge of the clearing. I turned my head just enough to glance. It was another car, same headlights. I didn't slow down. My fingers dug into the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. The road bent sharply after that, winding downhill. I drove faster. I could feel my pulse pounding in my neck. After about 5 minutes, the forest started to thin, and I saw a faint light in the distance. A gas station. Relief hit me hard, the kind of relief that makes your whole body go weak. I pulled in fast, the tires crunching on gravel. The place was small, just one pump island and a flickering fluorescent sign. The lights inside the station were on, but there was no one at the counter. I parked near the front door, right under the brightest light. I got out, still breathing hard. The cold air hit my face like a slap. My hands were shaking as I unscrewed the gas cap and started pumping fuel. The sound of it filling the tank was oddly comforting. Something normal, something steady. I looked around, scanning the dark road I had come from. Nothing, just the quiet hiss of wind moving through the grass. When the tank was full, I replaced the nozzle and started to walk around to the driver's side. That's when I noticed something on the back of my car. There was mud smeared along the lower half of the trunk, thick streaks of it across the bumper. My car had been clean earlier that day. It hadn't rained, and there was no reason for it to be there. I bent down, shining my phone's flashlight across it, and froze. Mixed into the mud were prints, long, uneven streaks, like someone's fingers had dragged across the surface. The spacing was strange, wide apart, pressed deep into the dirt, as if someone had grabbed onto the back of the car while it was moving. I stood there staring, my breath fogging in the air. My heart pounded so loud it filled my ears. I looked up again at the empty road, the darkness beyond the lights. No movement, no sound. I went inside the gas station, grabbed a paper towel from the counter, and wiped the marks away, even though my hands were trembling the whole time. I didn't even know why I did it, maybe just to make it less real. When I got back in the car, I locked the doors immediately. I stayed there for a few minutes, engine idling, trying to calm down. My reflection in the windshield looked pale, hollow. I couldn't stop glancing in the mirrors, half expecting to see those headlights again. Finally, I pulled back onto the road and headed home. I kept the speed steady, eyes fixed on the stretch of pavement ahead. The last half hour passed in a blur. When I finally reached my driveway, I felt the tension drain out of me all at once. I parked under the streetlight and just sat there for a long time, staring at the quiet houses on my street. Before I went inside, I walked to the back of my car one last time. There were faint streaks of fresh dirt again, new ones thinner than before, right along the bottom edge of the trunk. That was enough for me. I didn't touch them this time. I went inside, locked the door, and pulled the curtains shut. I didn't sleep much that night. Every sound outside made my chest tighten. A passing car, a dog barking, the rustle of leaves against the siding. In the morning, when the sun finally came up, I went back out to check the car again. The dirt streaks were gone, completely wiped clean. Not by me, not by rain, just gone. The car looked like it had been washed. But the ground beneath the trunk had footprints. Faint, muddy prints leading a few feet across the driveway, then stopping halfway toward the street. I stood there staring at them, the morning air sharp and cold. I followed the tracks until they ended. They didn't turn or fade, they just stopped, as if whoever left them had vanished into thin air. I never took that road again. Now, whenever I drive at night, I keep my mirrors angled differently, not to avoid glare, but so I don't have to look behind me for too long. Because sometimes, I still think about that car, the one that followed me, the one that disappeared, and the handprints in the dirt that shouldn't have been there at all. It was nearly 1 in the morning when I started the drive back home. I'd been at a friend's place out near the edge of town helping him fix his old car, and I hadn't realized how late it was until I stepped outside and saw how dark it had gotten. The night air was cold enough that every breath came out white, and the streetlights on his road did little more than make small glowing circles in the fog that had started to roll in. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. The highway was only a few miles away, and once I got there, it would be an easy 40-minute drive home. The first stretch was calm, quiet backroads, no traffic, just the hum of my tires against the pavement and the low drone of the heater. My headlights cut through the fog in thin beams, showing only a few meters ahead, and beyond that was nothing but darkness. I always found drives like that kind of peaceful. The world shrank to just me and the road. No distractions, no noise. But that calm didn't last long. After about 15 minutes, I turned onto a smaller road I hadn't taken before. It was the route my GPS said was fastest, one of those narrow 2-lane stretches with no shoulders and thick forest on both sides. The fog had gotten heavier now, like smoke drifting low over the ground, and the trees crowded close to the edge of the asphalt, their black shapes twisting upward. I slowed down to about 40, hands tight on the wheel. For the first few miles, I didn't see a single sign of life. No cars coming the other way, no distant headlights, no houses. Just tree after tree, the occasional sharp curve, and the faint rattle of branches when the wind passed through. I started to get that strange feeling that comes from too much silence, like the air itself was waiting for something to happen. I checked my phone at the next straight stretch. No signal, not even a single bar. I wasn't surprised. There were dead zones all over this area, but it still made my stomach tighten a bit. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and kept driving. Then, out of nowhere, I saw something lying in the middle of the road up ahead. I hit the brakes and slowed to a crawl. My headlights revealed a shape, small, low, stretched across both lanes. I leaned forward, squinting. It was a bicycle. It looked old, rusted, one tire flat and twisted. The handlebars were bent, and one pedal was broken clean off. It wasn't moving, obviously, but the way it sat there, half on its side, half upright, made it look like someone had just fallen off and left it that way. I looked around, checked the sides of the road, the trees, the ditch, nothing. I drove around it carefully, wheels crunching over loose gravel near the edge of the asphalt, then looked in the mirror once I passed. The fog swallowed it up almost instantly, disappearing into the white haze. I remember thinking how strange it was that someone would be out here riding a bike this late, especially in the middle of nowhere. For another 10 minutes, the road stayed straight. The fog thickened, and the headlights bounced back against it, making everything look closer than it really was. Then I noticed something else, headlights behind me. At first, they were far back, small dots of white barely visible through the haze. I felt a weird kind of relief. It was nice knowing I wasn't the only one out here. But after a few minutes, they were closer, then closer still. The car behind me kept pace exactly, never passing, never falling too far back. I tapped the brakes a few times to test it. The other car slowed down each time. My pulse started to climb. The road curved again, and I took the turns a little faster to see what they'd do. Every curve I made, they matched perfectly. Their headlights stayed centered behind me like they were tethered to my bumper. I tried to think logically. Maybe they were nervous driving in the fog and just keeping a safe distance behind another car. Maybe they were lost too. But the longer it went on, the less that made sense. After about 10 minutes of this, I reached a small pull-off area. Just a patch of gravel barely big enough for one car. I decided to test something. I slowed down, eased into the pull-off, and stopped. The other car didn't slow down right away, but as soon as I came to a stop, its headlights flicked out of view. I sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel, the engine idling quietly. I could still see the faint glow of their lights in the fog down the road, fading slowly as they continued forward. Then, just when I thought they were gone, their brake lights came on. They stopped. I watched through the windshield as the red glow hung there in the fog like two burning eyes. They didn't reverse, didn't drive away. They just stayed there. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I shifted into drive and pulled back onto the road. As soon as I did, the brake lights ahead went dark. A moment later, the headlights reappeared, closer this time. I hit the gas and drove faster. 50, 60. The road twisted and turned, but I barely slowed down. My tires kicked up small stones at the edges of the asphalt, but I didn't care. The other car stayed with me, matching my speed exactly. The fog was thick enough now that I could barely see 30 feet ahead, but I kept going. The white lines blurred beneath the headlights like threads pulling through fabric. I didn't dare look down at my phone. After what felt like forever, I spotted a sign through the haze, a gas station logo. I couldn't make out the name, but it was glowing faintly ahead. I slowed just enough to make the turn into the lot, gravel crunching under my tires as I pulled in. The place was old, one of those single pump stations with peeling paint and buzzing fluorescent lights. The lot was empty, no other cars, no attendant, just a small building with dark windows and a flickering light over the door. I parked near the pump, turned off the engine, and looked back at the road. The headlights were gone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty stretch of fog. No sound but the ticking of the cooling engine. Then, slowly, I exhaled and got out. The cold hit me hard. My breath clouded in front of my face as I stepped around the car, checking the rear. That's when I saw it, streaks of mud across the trunk. Long smears, uneven, like someone had brushed their hand against it. There were faint impressions too, shaped like fingers, pressed into the dust coating the paint. I froze. My throat went dry. I reached out, tracing one of the streaks with my fingertips. It wasn't old, the dirt was still damp. I looked back at the road again. Nothing but fog. I didn't bother to pump gas. I got back in the car, locked the doors, and turned the key. The engine started, the dashboard lighting up again, and I pulled back onto the highway as fast as I could. For the next half hour, I didn't see another car. The fog began to thin, the trees giving way to open fields again, and finally, the faint orange glow of the city appeared on the horizon. My chest slowly loosened as the lights grew brighter. When I reached home, I parked under the streetlight in front of my apartment building and just sat there for a minute, letting the silence settle. My hands were still shaking. I turned off the engine, stepped out, and walked around to the back of the car again. The streaks were still there, but fainter now, drying into pale marks. I noticed something else this time. Small clumps of grass stuck to the edge of the bumper, and a few scratches just below the trunk handle. It looked like someone had climbed onto the back of the car and hung on. That thought made my whole body go cold. The next morning, I went out again with a clear head and daylight. The streaks and scratches were still there, just as I remembered. I measured the distance between the marks. They lined up almost exactly with where a person's hands would be if they were gripping the edge of the trunk. I filed a report later that day with the police, just to be safe. They took my statement but didn't have much to go on. No cameras on that stretch of road, no witnesses, nothing. The officer said it was probably someone messing around, maybe trying to scare drivers. But he also mentioned something that stuck with me. He said that stretch of highway had been used years ago by smugglers. People would wait along the road and try to jump onto slow-moving vehicles to hitch a ride unnoticed. He said sometimes they'd even try to climb underneath to avoid being seen. I don't know if that's what happened that night, but I can't shake the image. The idea that, for miles, maybe someone was back there, holding on, hidden in the fog. Now, whenever I drive at night, I keep my eyes on the mirrors. Not for headlights this time, but for movement. A shadow that shouldn't be there, a shift of weight in the back, a sound that doesn't belong. Because the truth is, it's not the road that scares me anymore. It's the thought that sometimes you might not be alone, even when it feels like you are. It was almost midnight when I started the drive. I had been working late, finishing a delivery route for my job, and I just wanted to get home. My back hurt, my eyes were heavy, and my head had that dull ache that comes from too many hours staring at the road. The GPS said the fastest way back was through a rural shortcut, a 2-lane road that cut through farmland and a stretch of woods. I'd taken it once before during the day, and it was quiet then, nothing unusual. At night, though, it felt different. The sky was clear when I left the warehouse, but by the time I got onto that narrow road, clouds had rolled in. The moon was gone behind them, and the only light came from my headlights. They shone ahead in 2 pale beams, cutting through the darkness but not far enough. The edges of the road seemed to dissolve into black. I kept both hands on the wheel, leaning forward slightly, my eyes scanning the center line, the trees, and the mirrors. The first thing I noticed was how empty it felt. There were no cars, no distant glow of taillights, no lights from houses or barns. Just the road stretching endlessly and the faint hum of the tires on asphalt. Every once in a while, I'd pass a road sign. Faded, barely reflective, warning of curves or deer crossings. But even those looked old and forgotten, like nobody had maintained this route in years. The road started to curve more the deeper I went. Long, slow bends that made me slow down even though I didn't want to. On one of those turns, I saw something lying in the ditch on the right side. It was faint, maybe 30 feet ahead. At first I thought it was a bag or a piece of trash, but as I got closer, I saw it was a car bumper. Detached, cracked in half, covered in dirt. My headlights caught a glimpse of something shiny next to it. A license plate, still attached. That made me tighten my grip on the steering wheel. A bumper in the ditch wasn't that strange by itself, but there were no tire marks, no sign of an accident. I slowed down as I passed, trying to see if maybe there was a wrecked car deeper in the trees, but I couldn't see anything beyond the first few feet of brush. The darkness swallowed everything else. I drove on, trying to shake the weird feeling that had started to creep up my spine. Maybe someone had hit a deer and the bumper came off, I told myself. Maybe they'd already towed the car. It didn't make sense, but I didn't want to think too much about it. About 10 minutes later, I noticed something else. A sound. It was faint, but steady, coming from somewhere under the car. A rhythmic thunk, 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 that matched the speed of my tires. I turned down the radio to be sure. The sound didn't stop. I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder and put the car in park. The air outside was cold when I opened the door, and the quiet was almost painful after having the heater running for hours. I got out, crouched down, and looked under the car. Nothing looked broken or hanging loose. I checked the tires, all fine. I walked around the back and noticed the trunk had a streak of dirt across it, thick and uneven. It hadn't been there earlier that day. I brushed at it with my sleeve. The dirt came off easily, but underneath I noticed something else. Small scratches in the paint, thin parallel lines. I didn't know what to make of it. I got back in, shut the door harder than I meant to, and drove on. The sound stopped. For a while, I thought maybe I just imagined it. The road stretched out again, a straight line through open fields. Then I saw lights up ahead, red ones, flashing faintly through the fog that had started to drift across the road. I slowed down. As I got closer, I saw it was a pickup truck parked sideways across one lane with its hazard lights blinking. No one was standing near it. The driver's door was open, the interior light glowing weakly. The truck looked old, the kind of farm vehicle you'd see around here, with mud-caked tires and tools in the back. I slowed to almost a stop, leaning forward to see if maybe someone was hurt or working nearby, but I didn't see anyone. The driver's seat was empty. Something about it felt wrong. The road was narrow. If I stopped, I'd be blocking the lane, and I didn't want to get out. The fog was thickening, curling around the truck's shape, making it look less like a vehicle and more like a dark silhouette. I eased my car to the far left and carefully went around it, the edge of my tires grinding against the shoulder. I glanced once more in the mirror as I passed. The hazard lights were still blinking, but the open door looked wider now, like it had shifted slightly. After that, the drive felt endless. My hands were starting to sweat even though it was cold. The heater was still running, but I turned it down because the air felt too heavy. I tried to focus on the lines in the road, but my eyes kept flicking to the mirrors. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone on that stretch anymore. Then I saw it, headlights in the rearview mirror. They appeared so suddenly it made my heart jump. One moment, the road behind me was pitch black, and the next, there were two bright circles cutting through the fog. They were too close. I checked my speed, 55. The lights stayed right behind me, matching it exactly. I sped up to 60. So did they. The glare filled my mirror, so bright I had to angle it away. I kept driving like that for maybe 15 minutes. Every turn I took, they followed perfectly. Every time I slowed even slightly, the headlights closed in. My mouth had gone dry, and my hands were cramping from gripping the wheel too hard. There was no sign of any town ahead, no exits, no gas stations. Just that endless two-lane road and the fog and the feeling that the person behind me wasn't just another late-night driver. Finally, I saw something. A small driveway leading off the road toward what looked like a closed diner or rest stop. I decided to pull in, let them pass, maybe get a look at who it was. I slowed down, turned into the lot, and parked facing the road. The gravel crunched under my tires as I stopped. The car behind me didn't pass. The headlights went out. For several seconds, I sat there staring at the dark spot where they had been. My pulse was pounding in my ears. Then I saw the faint outline of a car pull to the side of the road, about 50 feet back. Stayed there, engine running, lights off. That was it for me. I threw my car into gear and turned back toward the main road. The other vehicle's headlights came back on instantly. I didn't wait to see more. I hit the gas, tires spinning for a second before gripping the pavement. The chase didn't last long. A few miles later, I spotted the glow of a gas station ahead. A modern one this time, lit up bright with the hum of fluorescent lights and the shine of clean asphalt. I pulled in hard, parked right in front of the entrance, and turned off the engine. The other car didn't follow me into the lot. It slowed as it passed, then kept going, disappearing into the fog again. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, my fingers still shaking. When I finally stepped out, the cold air hit me so hard it almost stung. The station was empty except for a night clerk inside, who barely looked up as I walked past the glass. I stayed there until I felt my heartbeat slow down, then went back out to check my car one last time. The dirt streaks on the back were heavier now, smeared all over the trunk and bumper. The scratches looked deeper too, like they had been made by something hard pressing into the paint. Near the bottom, where the bumper curved under, I noticed clumps of what looked like wet grass and a few small scratches in the metal that weren't there before. I crouched down with my phone flashlight and looked closer. There was a small tear in the plastic liner, and stuck to it was a piece of fabric, dark, torn, and caught on the edge. I didn't touch it. I just stood there for a while, staring at it, realizing what it probably meant. Someone had been there, maybe not holding on for long, maybe just trying to, but long enough to leave marks, dirt, and fabric behind. The next day, I reported it to the police. They told me others had complained about similar things on that same road. Strange vehicles following them, people finding damage on their bumpers or undercarriages afterward. They suspected it might be people trying to steal fuel or hitch rides undetected, climbing onto vehicles when they slowed. Sometimes they'd fall off when the car sped up or took a sharp turn. They never caught anyone. Now, whenever I drive home at night, I never take that shortcut again. I stick to the highway even if it takes twice as long. And every time I stop for gas or check my mirrors, I still half expect to see those headlights again, sitting just a little too close, waiting for the right moment to follow. It was almost midnight when I started the drive. I had been working late, finishing a delivery route for my job, and I just wanted to get home. My back hurt, my eyes were heavy, and my head had that dull ache that comes from too many hours staring at the road. The GPS said the fastest way back was through a rural shortcut, a 2-lane road that cut through farmland and a stretch of woods. I'd taken it once before during the day, and it was quiet then, nothing unusual. At night, though, it felt different. The sky was clear when I left the warehouse, but by the time I got onto that narrow road, clouds had rolled in. The moon was gone behind them, and the only light came from my headlights. They shone ahead in 2 pale beams, cutting through the darkness but not far enough. The edges of the road seemed to dissolve into black. I kept both hands on the wheel, leaning forward slightly, my eyes scanning the center line, the trees, and the mirrors. The first thing I noticed was how empty it felt. There were no cars, no distant glow of taillights, no lights from houses or barns. Just the road stretching endlessly and the faint hum of the tires on asphalt. Every once in a while, I'd pass a road sign, faded, barely reflective, warning of curves or deer crossings. But even those looked old and forgotten, like nobody had maintained this route in years. The road started to curve more the deeper I went. Long, slow bends that made me slow down even though I didn't want to. On one of those turns, I saw something lying in the ditch on the right side. It was faint, maybe 30 feet ahead. At first I thought it was a bag or a piece of trash, but as I got closer, I saw it was a car bumper. Detached, cracked in half, covered in dirt. My headlights caught a glimpse of something shiny next to it. A license plate, still attached. That made me tighten my grip on the steering wheel. A bumper in the ditch wasn't that strange by itself, but there were no tire marks, no sign of an accident. I slowed down as I passed, trying to see if maybe there was a wrecked car deeper in the trees, but I couldn't see anything beyond the first few feet of brush. The darkness swallowed everything else. I drove on, trying to shake the weird feeling that had started to creep up my spine. Maybe someone had hit a deer and the bumper came off, I told myself. Maybe they'd already towed the car. It didn't make sense, but I didn't want to think too much about it. About 10 minutes later, I noticed something else. A sound. It was faint, but steady, coming from somewhere under the car. A rhythmic thunk, 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 that matched the speed of my tires. I turned down the radio to be sure. The sound didn't stop. I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder and put the car in park. The air outside was cold when I opened the door, and the quiet was almost painful after having the heater running for hours. I got out, crouched down, and looked under the car. Nothing looked broken or hanging loose. I checked the tires, all fine. I walked around the back and noticed the trunk had a streak of dirt across it, thick and uneven. It hadn't been there earlier that day. I brushed at it with my sleeve. The dirt came off easily, but underneath I noticed something else. Small scratches in the paint, thin parallel lines. I didn't know what to make of it. I got back in, shut the door harder than I meant to, and drove on. The sound stopped. For a while, I thought maybe I just imagined it. The road stretched out again, a straight line through open fields. Then I saw lights up ahead, red ones, flashing faintly through the fog that had started to drift across the road. I slowed down. As I got closer, I saw it was a pickup truck parked sideways across one lane with its hazard lights blinking. No one was standing near it. The driver's door was open, the interior light glowing weakly. The truck looked old, the kind of farm vehicle you'd see around here, with mud-caked tires and tools in the back. I slowed to almost a stop, leaning forward to see if maybe someone was hurt or working nearby, but I didn't see anyone. The driver's seat was empty. Something about it felt wrong. The road was narrow. If I stopped, I'd be blocking the lane, and I didn't want to get out. The fog was thickening, curling around the truck's shape, making it look less like a vehicle and more like a dark silhouette. I eased my car to the far left and carefully went around it, the edge of my tires grinding against the shoulder. I glanced once more in the mirror as I passed. The hazard lights were still blinking, but the open door looked wider now, like it had shifted slightly. After that, the drive felt endless. My hands were starting to sweat even though it was cold. The heater was still running, but I turned it down because the air felt too heavy. I tried to focus on the lines in the road, but my eyes kept flicking to the mirrors. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone on that stretch anymore. Then I saw it, headlights in the rearview mirror. They appeared so suddenly it made my heart jump. One moment, the road behind me was pitch black, and the next, there were two bright circles cutting through the fog. They were too close. I checked my speed, 55. The lights stayed right behind me, matching it exactly. I sped up to 60. So did they. The glare filled my mirror, so bright I had to angle it away. I kept driving like that for maybe 15 minutes. Every turn I took, they followed perfectly. Every time I slowed even slightly, the headlights closed in. My mouth had gone dry, and my hands were cramping from gripping the wheel too hard. There was no sign of any town ahead, no exits, no gas stations. Just that endless two-lane road and the fog and the feeling that the person behind me wasn't just another late-night driver. Finally, I saw something. A small driveway leading off the road toward what looked like a closed diner or rest stop. I decided to pull in, let them pass, maybe get a look at who it was. I slowed down, turned into the lot, and parked facing the road. The gravel crunched under my tires as I stopped. The car behind me didn't pass. The headlights went out. For several seconds, I sat there staring at the dark spot where they had been. My pulse was pounding in my ears. Then I saw the faint outline of a car pull to the side of the road, about 50 feet back. Stayed there, engine running, lights off. That was it for me. I threw my car into gear and turned back toward the main road. The other vehicle's headlights came back on instantly. I didn't wait to see more. I hit the gas, tires spinning for a second before gripping the pavement. The chase didn't last long. A few miles later, I spotted the glow of a gas station ahead. A modern one this time, lit up bright with the hum of fluorescent lights and the shine of clean asphalt. I pulled in hard, parked right in front of the entrance, and turned off the engine. The other car didn't follow me into the lot. It slowed as it passed, then kept going, disappearing into the fog again. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, my fingers still shaking. When I finally stepped out, the cold air hit me so hard it almost stung. The station was empty except for a night clerk inside, who barely looked up as I walked past the glass. I stayed there until I felt my heartbeat slow down, then went back out to check my car one last time. The dirt streaks on the back were heavier now, smeared all over the trunk and bumper. The scratches looked deeper too, like they had been made by something hard pressing into the paint. Near the bottom, where the bumper curved under, I noticed clumps of what looked like wet grass and a few small scratches in the metal that weren't there before. I crouched down with my phone flashlight and looked closer. There was a small tear in the plastic liner, and stuck to it was a piece of fabric, dark, torn, and caught on the edge. I didn't touch it. I just stood there for a while, staring at it, realizing what it probably meant. Someone had been there, maybe not holding on for long, maybe just trying to, but long enough to leave marks, dirt, and fabric behind. The next day, I reported it to the police. They told me others had complained about similar things on that same road. Strange vehicles following them, people finding damage on their bumpers or undercarriages afterward. They suspected it might be people trying to steal fuel or hitch rides undetected, climbing onto vehicles when they slowed. Sometimes they'd fall off when the car sped up or took a sharp turn. They never caught anyone. Now, whenever I drive home at night, I never take that shortcut again. I stick to the highway even if it takes twice as long. And every time I stop for gas or check my mirrors, I still half expect to see those headlights again. Sitting just a little too close, waiting for the right moment to follow.